The snow came down so hard that Olivia Winters couldn't see her own hands in front of her face, and somewhere between the ranch house and the barn, she had lost everything she believed in. It was January 1884 in Breckenridge, Colorado, a mining town nestled high in the Rocky Mountains where winter showed no mercy to the unprepared. Olivia had been 22 years old when she arrived 6 months earlier with her brother Thomas and his wife Margaret, hoping to start fresh after their parents died of fever back in St. Louis. Thomas had big dreams of striking it rich in the silver mines, but those dreams died with him 3 weeks ago when a tunnel collapsed. Margaret followed him into death just days later, her heart simply giving out from grief. Now, Olivia was alone with a small ranch on the outskirts of town, 3 horses, a dozen chickens, and a winter that seemed determined to bury her alive. She had ventured out to feed the animals despite the storm warnings because they needed her, because keeping busy was the only thing that kept the crushing loneliness at bay. But the blizzard had come faster and fiercer than anyone predicted. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at her coat and skirts, driving ice crystals into her exposed skin like thousands of tiny needles. She stumbled forward, trying to retrace her steps back to the house, but the world had become nothing but white chaos. Her foot caught on something buried in the snow, and she went down hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The cold was seeping through her layers of clothing, making her limbs heavy and unresponsive. This was how it ended, she thought with a strange clarity. Not from heartbreak or loneliness, but from the simple fact of winter in the mountains. She had been foolish to think she could survive out here alone, foolish to think anything mattered anymore. She closed her eyes against the stinging wind, and that was when she heard it. A voice, deep and commanding, cutting through the storm. "Hold on. I am coming to you." Strong arms lifted her from the snow as if she weighed nothing. She tried to focus on the face above her, but could only make out the impression of a dark hat and a bandana pulled up over the nose and mouth. He was saying something else, but the wind tore the words away. Then he was moving, carrying her with purpose and certainty through the blinding white. She should have been frightened, should have struggled, but warmth was already radiating from his body into hers, and she found herself turning toward it like a flower to the sun. Time became elastic and strange. She was aware of movement, of being jostled and held tight against a broad chest, of the storm raging around them. Then suddenly they were out of the wind, surrounded by the warm animal smell of horses and hay. A barn, she realized dimly. Not her barn, somewhere else. He set her down carefully on a pile of hay and began removing her frozen outer garments with efficient, impersonal movements. "Can you hear me? I need you to stay awake." She forced her eyes to focus. The man had pulled down his bandana, revealing a face that was all hard angles and weathered tan, with gray eyes the color of storm clouds and a dark beard that couldn't quite hide the strong line of his jaw. He looked to be in his late 20s, with the kind of rough handsomeness that came from a life lived entirely outdoors. "I can hear you," she managed through chattering teeth. "Good. That is very good." His voice had lost some of its commanding edge, replaced by something gentler. "I am going to wrap you in blankets now. You need to get warm. What were you doing out in this storm?" "My animals. I had to feed them." He shook his head as he wrapped a heavy wool blanket around her shoulders, then another. "Your animals would rather go hungry than have you freeze to death trying to reach them. You don't understand. They are all I have left." To her horror, tears started sliding down her frozen cheeks. "Everything else is gone. My brother, his wife, everyone I came here with. The ranch is falling apart, and I don't know what I am doing, and I tried. I really tried. But it is all too much, and I just wanted to take care of the animals at least, to do one thing right, and now I cannot even do that." The stranger's expression softened. He reached out and gently wiped the tears from her face with his thumb. "You are alive. That is more than one thing right. That is everything." "Is it? Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier to just give up." "Do not say that." His voice was fierce now. "Do not even think it. I have seen too many good people lost to this country, and you are not going to be one of them. You don't know anything about me. I know you went out in a blizzard to feed your animals. I know you are fighting to keep going even though you have lost everything. That tells me more than enough." He sat back on his heels, studying her. "I am Harrison Nash. I have a ranch about 2 miles south of here. I was out checking on some cattle that got separated from the herd when I saw you fall. It took me a few minutes to reach you, but I am glad I got there when I did." "Olivia Winters," she said. Her teeth had stopped chattering, and she could feel warmth slowly returning to her extremities, though her fingers and toes prickled painfully. "Thank you for saving my life." "You are welcome, Olivia Winters. Now I need to go check on your animals since that was important enough to you to risk your life for. Where is your ranch?" She tried to stand, but he pushed her gently but firmly back down. "About a 1/4 mile northwest of here, I think. But you cannot go out there. The storm is too dangerous." "The storm is exactly why I need to go. Your animals need food and water, and if I do not make sure your barn is secure, you might not have any animals left when this blows over." He stood and began pulling on his outer layers again. "My horse knows the way back here." "Will you be all right for a little while?" "Yes, but please be careful." He paused at the barn door and looked back at her, his eyes intense. "Believe in us, Olivia. Believe that there are still people who will help you, that you are not as alone as you think. Can you do that?" She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him that faith had gotten her nothing but heartache, but there was something about the way he looked at her, something that made her want to try. "I will try. That is all I ask." Then he was gone, back out into the howling white. Olivia pulled the blankets tighter around herself and looked around the barn. It was well maintained, with 4 stalls currently occupied by horses that watched her with calm, curious eyes. Tools hung neatly on the walls, and bags of feed were stacked in a corner. Everything spoke of a man who took pride in his work, who cared for things properly. It was so different from her own barn, where everything was slowly falling into disrepair because she did not have the knowledge or the strength to keep up with all the work. The barn door opened again, and an older man shuffled in, wrapped in so many layers of clothing he looked twice his natural size. He jumped slightly when he saw her. "Oh, I did not realize Harrison had brought anyone back. Are you all right, miss?" "Yes, thank you." "Your son went to check on my animals." The old man chuckled. "Harrison is not my son, though I am old enough to be his grandfather. I am Walter, the foreman of the Nash Ranch, have been for near about 15 years now. Harrison is the owner, and a finer man you will not find in all of Colorado." "He seems very kind," Olivia agreed. Walter busied himself checking on the horses, but she could tell he wanted to talk more. "Came here about 8 years ago with nothing but a horse and a dream. Worked harder than any 3 men combined, saved every penny, and when old Franklin Harris decided to sell his ranch, Harrison bought it. Built it up from near nothing to one of the most successful operations in the county. All through honest work and fair dealing too. Never once tried to cheat or take advantage of anyone." "That is admirable," Olivia said, meaning it. "It is, especially given what he survived before coming here." Walter paused, seeming to weigh his words. "I probably should not be telling tales, but I figure you ought to know something about the man who just saved your life." Harrison was set to be married back in Kansas, to a woman he had known since childhood. Wedding was all planned, Dress bought, church reserved. 3 days before the ceremony, she ran off with a traveling salesman, took all of Harrison's savings with her, left him with nothing but debts and a broken heart. Olivia felt a pang of sympathy. That is terrible. It was, but it made him stronger. He came west to start over, to build something that could never be taken from him. And he did. But he has never looked at another woman since, far as I can tell. Works from dawn to dusk every day, never goes to the social gatherings in town, keeps to himself mostly. Good man, but a lonely one. Walter fixed her with a meaningful look. Then again, I see the way he looked at you before he went out into that storm. First time in 8 years I have seen anything like hope in his eyes. Before Olivia could respond to that startling statement, the barn door crashed open and Harrison staggered in, covered in snow and leading a horse that was also completely white with accumulated ice. He pulled down his bandana, and she could see that his lips were blue with cold. "Your animals are all secure and fed," he said through chattering teeth. "The barn was holding up well enough, but I reinforced the door and made sure they had plenty of water. They should be fine until the storm passes." Walter immediately went to help him, taking the horse and beginning to rub it down while Harrison stripped off his frozen outer layers. Olivia struggled to her feet, still wrapped in blankets, and went to him. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his ice-encrusted beard. "You are frozen solid. You could have died out there." "But I did not." He caught her hand and held it against his face for a moment, his eyes locked on hers. "Your animals are safe. That is what matters. What matters is that you came back," she said softly. The wind howled outside, rattling the barn walls, but inside a different kind of warmth was building. Walter cleared his throat loudly. "I will just go check on the other horses. Take your time getting warm, boss." After the foreman had discreetly moved to the far end of the barn, Harrison led Olivia back to the hay bales and sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Tell me about your brother," he said. "If you want to, I mean. Sometimes talking helps." So she did. She told him about Thomas, 3 years older and always watching out for her after their mother died when Olivia was 12. About how their father had worked himself to death trying to keep the family business afloat after the war, leaving them with nothing but debts. About Thomas's determination to make a new life in Colorado, and how excited they had all been on the train west. About the way Margaret used to sing while she cooked, and how Thomas would sneak up behind her and spin her around, making her laugh. About the terrible day the mine foreman came to tell them there had been a collapse, and the even worse day when Margaret simply did not wake up. Harrison listened without interrupting, his steady presence more comforting than any words could have been. When she finally ran out of things to say, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I lost my parents when I was 16. House fire. I was out working in the fields, and by the time I got back, there was nothing left but ashes. I know that emptiness you are feeling, that sense that the world has fundamentally changed and will never be right again. Does it get easier, eventually? Not all at once and not in a straight line. Some days will be better than others. But yes, it does get easier." He turned to look at her, and she was struck by the depth of emotion in his gray eyes. "Especially if you let people help you. You do not have to carry everything alone. I am not very good at accepting help. Neither am I, but maybe we can learn together." There was a question in his words, an invitation to something more than just neighborly assistance. Olivia felt a flutter of something in her chest that she had thought died with Thomas and Margaret. Hope, maybe, or possibility, or just the simple human need for connection. "I would like that," she said. The storm raged for 3 more days. Olivia stayed in the main ranch house, in a small guest room that Walter told her had not been used in years. Harrison insisted she was welcome to stay as long as she needed, and given the continued whiteout conditions outside, she had little choice but to accept. But as the hours passed, she found herself grateful for the circumstances that had thrown them together. The Nash ranch house was a solid structure of logs and stone, built to withstand the harsh mountain winters. It was sparsely decorated but comfortable, with a massive fireplace in the main room that Walter kept constantly fed with wood. There were 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with a large iron stove, and even a small room that Harrison used as an office, filled with ledgers and papers related to running the ranch. Harrison spent most of the first day sleeping, recovering from his exposure to the storm. Olivia made herself useful by cooking meals, mending some torn clothing she found in a basket, and talking with Walter about the ranch operations. She learned that Harrison ran about 200 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and had recently started experimenting with raising sheep as well. Despite the prejudice many cattle ranchers had against the animals. "He does not care what other people think," Walter explained as they prepared dinner together on the second day. "He looks at the numbers and makes decisions based on what makes sense, not on tradition or pride. That is why he is successful." On the third day, the wind finally died down enough that they could see more than a few feet in front of their faces, though the snow continued to fall steadily. Harrison declared it safe enough to check on the animals, and Olivia insisted on coming with him. He did not argue, just helped her bundle up properly and showed her how to tie a rope around her waist with the other end secured to him. "If we get separated, you follow this rope back," he instructed. "Do not try to go anywhere else. Understand?" "I understand." They made their way first to the main barn, where the horses greeted them with happy whinnies. Harrison moved among them with practiced ease, checking each one for any signs of distress or injury, running his hands over their legs and looking at their hooves. Olivia watched, fascinated by his easy competence. When he caught her staring, he smiled. "Want to learn?" "Yes, actually." So he taught her, guiding her hands to feel for heat that might indicate an injury, showing her how to pick out a hoof safely, explaining what signs to look for that might mean an animal was sick. His hands were gentle on hers, his voice patient as he answered her questions. She found herself standing closer than strictly necessary, aware of his warmth and solidity beside her. They moved on to check the cattle, which were huddled in groups in the lee of several large windbreaks Harrison had constructed specifically for this purpose. "Lost too many animals my first winter here," he explained. "Learned the hard way that you have to prepare for the worst always." "How did you keep going after that, after losing so much?" He was quiet for a moment, watching the cattle. "Spite mostly. I was angry at the world, at myself for being unprepared, at everything that had gone wrong in my life. So I decided I was going to succeed just to prove that I could. Not the healthiest motivation, maybe, but it got me through." He glanced at her. "Eventually the anger faded and I found I actually loved this life. The work, the animals, the land. It is hard and sometimes brutal, but it is mine, you know. I built it. No one can take it from me." "Except the weather," Olivia pointed out. He laughed, a rich, warm sound that made something inside her chest expand. "All right, except the weather. But even that is just a challenge to overcome, not a defeat." They made their way to Olivia's ranch last. The house looked forlorn and abandoned, half buried in snow drifts. The barn was in better shape thanks to Harrison's earlier repairs, and the animals inside were all alive and relatively comfortable, though clearly happy to see them. Harrison set about feeding and watering them while Olivia went into the house to gather some of her belongings. Inside, everything was cold and still. She moved through the rooms quickly, grabbing clothing and a few personal items, including a photograph of her family taken the year before her mother died. She paused in the doorway of the room Thomas and Margaret had shared, looking at the neatly made bed and Margaret's hairbrush still sitting on the dresser. The grief hit her again, sharp and sudden, but this time it was accompanied by something else. A sense that life was still moving forward, that there were still things worth holding on to. She thought of Harrison's words in the barn during the storm. "Believe in us." Maybe it was time to start trying. When she emerged from the house, she found Harrison fixing a shutter that had come loose. He saw her arms full of belongings and immediately came to help. "Getting what you need?" "Yes. I thought if the storm continues, I might as well have some of my own things." "Good idea." He hesitated, then added, "You are welcome to stay at my place as long as you want, even after the storm ends. Until you figure out what you want to do with this place." "That is very generous, but I cannot impose on your hospitality forever." "It is not an imposition." His voice was firm. "I like having you there. The house feels different with you in it. Better." She looked up at him, at his serious expression and the hope barely concealed in his eyes, and felt her heart beat faster. "I like being there," she admitted. "I like being around you." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair that had escaped her braid behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "Then stay. We can figure out the rest as we go." The storm finally broke on the fourth day, leaving the world transformed. Snow lay 3 feet deep in places, sculpted by the wind into fantastic drifts and shapes. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun reflecting off the snow so brightly it hurt to look at without squinting. The temperature was still far below freezing, but without the wind it felt almost pleasant. Harrison declared it time to start digging out. He, Walter, and 2 ranch hands who had been holed up in the bunkhouse during the storm attacked the snow with shovels, clearing paths between the buildings and out to the main road. Olivia helped where she could, though she quickly learned that she lacked the upper body strength for sustained shoveling. Instead, she focused on keeping everyone fed and making sure hot coffee was always available. Over the next week, life slowly returned to normal, or at least to a new version of normal. Olivia continued staying at the ranch house, in her little guest room that no longer felt quite so unfamiliar. She and Harrison fell into an easy routine, working side by side during the day and sitting by the fire in the evening, talking about everything and nothing. She learned that he loved books but rarely had time to read them, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a run-in with a barbed wire fence, that he always checked on the horses personally before bed, no matter how tired he was. He learned that she could play the piano, that she had always wanted to learn to ride properly, that she had a sharp sense of humor that came out when she was comfortable. Walter watched them with barely concealed satisfaction, and made himself scarce whenever possible. The ranch hands exchanged knowing glances but said nothing, at least not where Olivia could hear. She knew the situation was unusual, knew that her reputation could suffer if she stayed much longer unchaperoned, but she found she did not care. For the first time since losing her family, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 2 weeks after the storm, Harrison asked if she wanted to learn to ride properly. "If you are going to make a life out here, you need to be comfortable on a horse," he said. "Not just sitting in a saddle, but really riding, being in control." "I would love that." He saddled up a gentle mare named Daisy and led her into the paddock, then spent the next hour teaching Olivia the basics of horsemanship. How to sit properly, how to hold the reins, how to use her legs to communicate with the horse. She fell off twice, landing in the snow both times, but Harrison was always there to help her up, his hands lingering on her waist perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "You are a natural," he said as she successfully trotted Daisy in a circle. "You are just saying that to be nice." "I do not say things I do not mean." He moved closer, one hand on Daisy's neck, looking up at Olivia. "You have good instincts. You listen to the horse and respond to what she needs. That is more important than technique." "Harrison," she said softly, "can I ask you something? Anything? What are we doing? I mean, us." He was quiet for a long moment, his hand moving from the horse to rest on Olivia's knee. "I've been asking myself the same question. I keep telling myself to be sensible, that you are dealing with grief and I am just the person who happened to be there. That you will wake up one day and realize you can do much better than a rough cowboy with a failed past." He looked up at her, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "But then I spend time with you and I forget all of that. I just know that I am happier than I have been in years, that I look forward to each day because you are in it, that I want to know everything about you and show you everything I have built here." Olivia's heart was pounding. She dismounted carefully, bringing herself face to face with him, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. "I am not going to wake up one day and think I can do better than you. You saved my life, Harrison, not just in the storm but after. You gave me a reason to keep going when I had lost all of mine. You showed me that there is still kindness in the world, still people worth believing in." "Olivia," he breathed, and then his arms were around her and his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might pull away. But she did not. She melted into him, her hands coming up to fist in his coat, kissing him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you. I know it is too soon, I know we should wait, but I cannot help it. You have gotten under my skin and into my heart." "Then that makes two of us," she whispered. "Because I am falling in love with you too." He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, until they were both dizzy with it. Daisy nudged them impatiently, wanting attention, and they broke apart laughing. "We should probably get back," Harrison said reluctantly. "Before Walter comes looking for us." "Probably," Olivia agreed, but neither of them moved. They stood there in the snow, arms around each other, smiling like fools. The sun was warm on their faces, the sky impossibly blue, and for the first time since the blizzard, Olivia felt truly, completely alive. That night after dinner, Harrison asked Walter and the ranch hands to give them some privacy. Once they were alone in the main room, he took Olivia's hand and led her to the sofa near the fire. "We need to talk about the future," he said seriously. "About what you want and what I want and how we make that work. All right. Your ranch is a problem," he said bluntly. "Not the land itself, but the fact that you are trying to run it alone. Even if you hired help, it would be difficult. The house needs repairs, the barn needs work, and you would need to build up your stock significantly to make it profitable." "I know," Olivia said quietly. She had been avoiding thinking about it, but he was right. "I am not sure I can afford to do all of that. So here is what I am proposing. Sell me your land. I will give you a fair price, enough to set yourself up somewhere else if that is what you want. I can use the extra grazing land and I will take care of your animals. Or," he paused, his grip on her hand tightening, "you could stay here. With me. We could combine our operations, our lives. I am asking you to marry me, Olivia." She stared at him, her mouth open in shock. "Harrison, we have only known each other 2 weeks. I know. And if you want to wait, if you need more time, I understand. But I also know how I feel. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to teach you everything I know about ranching and learn from you in return. I want to face whatever this hard country throws at us together." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. You told me in the barn that first day that you had lost everything. Let me give you something new. Let me give you a home, a future, a love that will not fail. Believe in us, Olivia. Take a chance on what we could be." Tears were streaming down her face, but they were not tears of grief this time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." His whoop of joy echoed through the house, and then he was pulling her into his arms, spinning her around and kissing her soundly. The door to the bunkhouse flew open and Walter appeared, looking alarmed. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," Harrison said, not taking his eyes off Olivia. She said yes. "Well, it is about time," Walter said with satisfaction. "Congratulations to you both." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Breckenridge, with Walter standing up as best man and the wife of one of the ranch hands acting as Olivia's attendant. It was a simple ceremony, but Olivia thought it was perfect. She wore a dress of deep blue wool that she had sewn herself, and Harrison had gotten a haircut and trimmed his beard and looked so handsome in his Sunday best that she could barely breathe. The Reverend spoke about love and faith, about two people choosing to face life's challenges together. When Harrison repeated his vows, his voice was strong and clear. "I, Harrison Nash, take you, Olivia Winters, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you through good times and bad, through wealth and poverty, through sickness and health, as long as we both shall live." When it was her turn, Olivia looked into his eyes and meant every word. "I, Olivia Winters, take you, Harrison Nash, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you through good times and bad, through wealth and poverty, through sickness and health, as long as we both shall live. You found me when I was lost. You gave me hope when I had none. I believe in us, now and always." The kiss that sealed their marriage was sweet and full of promise. As they walked out of the church into the crisp February air, hand in hand, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was who she was meant to be with. The first year of their marriage was not easy. Olivia had to learn how to truly run a ranch, which meant early mornings and backbreaking work, and more than a few mistakes. She learned to milk cows and mend fences, to help with calving and doctor sick animals. Her hands became rough and calloused, her skin tan from constant sun exposure. But she also learned the satisfaction of seeing things grow and thrive under her care, of knowing she was contributing something real and valuable. Harrison was patient with her mistakes and generous with his praise. He showed her the business side of ranching as well, teaching her to read the ledgers and understand the economics of their operation. "This is your ranch too now," he told her. "You need to know everything about how it works." They also learned how to be married, how to navigate the small conflicts and adjustments that came with sharing a life. Harrison liked to wake up early and start work immediately, while Olivia preferred to ease into her day more slowly. He was meticulous about keeping things organized, while she was more relaxed about tidiness. But they found compromises and common ground, learning to appreciate their differences rather than let them divide. And the love between them only grew stronger. Harrison had a tender side that he showed only to her, a gentleness that contrasted with his rough exterior. He brought her wildflowers in the summer and carved her a beautiful jewelry box in the winter. He held her when nightmares about the blizzard woke her in the middle of the night, and celebrated with her when she successfully delivered her first calf on her own. In return, she brought warmth and laughter into his life, filling the house with music from the piano he bought her as a wedding gift, cooking his favorite meals, reminding him that there was more to life than just work. Their physical relationship was a revelation to them both. Olivia had known nothing about such matters before their wedding night, and while Harrison had more experience, it had all been meaningless encounters years in the past. Together, they discovered the profound intimacy of being vulnerable with another person, the joy of giving and receiving pleasure, the way physical connection could deepen emotional bonds. They made love frequently and enthusiastically, in their bed, and sometimes in less conventional places around the ranch when they were sure of their privacy. It was one more way they belonged to each other. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Harrison's business acumen combined with Olivia's attention to the well-being of the animals proved to be a winning combination. They expanded their cattle herd and added more sheep, despite grumbling from some of their neighbors. Harrison ignored the complaints and focused on the numbers, which did not lie. The sheep were profitable. In the spring of 1885, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be sure before saying anything. When she finally told Harrison over breakfast one morning, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her up in his arms, careful despite his excitement, and kissed her until they were both breathless. "We are going to have a baby," he kept repeating as if he could not quite believe it. "Olivia, we are going to have a baby." "We are," she confirmed, laughing at his joy. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am amazed. I am terrified. I am so grateful I can barely form words." He pulled back to look at her seriously. "I am going to be a good father, I promise you that. This child is going to know every single day how much it is loved." "I know you will be a wonderful father," she assured him. "You are going to be amazing." The pregnancy was relatively easy, despite some morning sickness in the early months. Olivia continued working on the ranch as long as she could, only reluctantly agreeing to take it easier in her final 2 months, when Harrison started to panic every time she lifted anything heavier than a plate. The doctor from town came out regularly to check on her, pronouncing her healthy and strong. She gave birth in November of 1885, during a cold snap that frosted the windows and made the floorboards creak. Harrison refused to leave her side through the long hours of labor, holding her hand and wiping her forehead, and telling her she was the bravest, strongest woman he had ever known. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Harrison wept openly. They named him Thomas, after Olivia's brother. He was a healthy baby with a strong set of lungs and his father's gray eyes. Harrison was completely besotted, spending hours just watching Thomas sleep, jumping up at every cry. Olivia teased him about it but found his devotion deeply touching. This was not a man who would ever abandon his family or put his own interests first. This was a man who would move mountains for the people he loved. Life settled into a new rhythm with Thomas in their lives. Olivia stayed closer to the house during his first few months, nursing him and learning the particular language of his cries and needs. Harrison took on more of the physical ranch work, often bringing Thomas out in a sling to be with him while he worked. Olivia would watch from the window as her tall, strong husband moved around the barnyard with their tiny son strapped to his chest, talking to him constantly about the horses and cattle and everything they were doing. Walter became a doting grandfather figure, carving toys for Thomas and telling him stories about the old days. The ranch hands treated the baby like precious cargo, competing to make him smile. It was clear that Thomas was going to grow up surrounded by love and security, with a whole community invested in his welfare. When Thomas was 6 months old, Olivia returned to working more actively on the ranch. She had missed it more than she expected, missed the physicality of the work and the satisfaction of caring for the animals. Harrison had hired a woman from town, an older widow named Martha, to help with the house and watch Thomas when both of them were out working. Martha was efficient and kind, with grandchildren of her own, and Olivia felt comfortable leaving Thomas in her care. The summer of 1886 brought drought. Day after scorching day passed with no rain, and the grass turned brown and brittle. Harrison was worried about having enough fodder for the animals through the coming winter. He and Olivia spent their evenings poring over the account books, trying to decide if they should sell off some of their stock now or gamble on the weather improving. "What does your gut tell you?" Olivia asked one night. Harrison rubbed his eyes tiredly. "That we should keep the herd intact if at all possible. These are good animals, strong breeding stock. If we can just get through this dry spell, we will be in a better position than most of our neighbors." "Then that is what we do," Olivia said firmly. "We have some savings. We use them if we have to, but we do not give up on what we have built." He looked at her with love and gratitude. "Have I told you lately that you are an amazing partner?" "Not since this morning," she teased. "But I would not mind hearing it again." The drought finally broke in August with a series of thunderstorms that soaked the land and turned the creek into a raging torrent. They had made it through without having to sell any animals, though their savings were significantly depleted. But the fall grasses came in thick and green, and by winter they had plenty of fodder stored up. Once again, their faith in each other and their operation had been rewarded. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow and prosper. Harrison bought additional land when it became available, always careful not to overextend themselves but steadily expanding their holdings. Olivia proved to have a talent for breeding horses, developing a line of sturdy, intelligent animals that became sought after throughout the region. They added chickens and pigs to their operations, diversifying their income streams. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic child who was equally comfortable helping his father with the horses or sitting with his mother while she did the accounts. He had his father's love of the land and his mother's quick mind, and it was clear he would grow up to be a force to be reckoned with. When Thomas was 3 years old, Olivia became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, with more sickness and fatigue. Harrison hovered anxiously, trying to take as much off her plate as possible. She gave birth in the spring of 1889 to twin daughters, which none of them had expected. Elizabeth came first, tiny and perfect, followed minutes later by Emily, equally small and perfect. Harrison was overwhelmed, holding one daughter in each arm with an expression of complete wonder. "3 children," he said in amazement. "We have 3 children, Olivia." "We do," she agreed, exhausted but happy. "Are you disappointed they are not boys? Are you joking? They are perfect." "You are perfect. I am the luckiest man who ever lived." He carefully placed the babies in the cradle he had built and came to sit beside her on the bed, taking her hand. "I love you so much. Thank you for this family, for this life. Thank you for saying yes to me all those years ago." "Thank you for finding me in the storm," she replied softly. "Thank you for giving me a reason to believe again." The twins brought new chaos and new joy into their lives. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sisters, always wanting to help take care of them. Olivia was run ragged trying to keep up with 2 infants plus an active 3-year-old, even with Martha's help. Harrison did everything he could, walking the floors at night with a crying baby so Olivia could get some sleep, taking Thomas out to give her peace during the day, never complaining about the state of the house or the simple meals. "Marriage is a partnership," he told Walter one day when the foreman commented on how much Harrison was doing around the house. "Olivia works just as hard as I do, maybe harder. The least I can do is make sure she is not carrying all the domestic burden alone." By the time the twins were a year old, life had settled into a new normal again. The ranch was doing well, the children were healthy, and Olivia and Harrison's love for each other had only deepened through the challenges and joys they had faced together. They had learned to work as a team, to communicate clearly, to support each other through difficult times. They had built not just a successful ranch but a true partnership, a marriage based on mutual respect and genuine affection. One evening in the fall of 1890, after the children were in bed, Harrison and Olivia sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. It had been 6 years since the blizzard that brought them together, and Olivia sometimes still marveled at how different her life was from what she had imagined that terrible day. "You ever regret it?" Harrison asked suddenly. "Marrying me, I mean, tying yourself to this hard life." She turned to look at him in surprise. "Never, not once. Why would you even ask that? I know this is not the life you were raised for. You were a city girl, used to culture and comfort, and I brought you to the middle of nowhere to work yourself to the bone on a cattle ranch. Harrison Nash, you listen to me." She took his face in her hands, making him look at her. "You gave me everything that matters. You gave me love and purpose and a home. You gave me beautiful children and a partnership I treasure more than anything. Yes, the work is hard. Yes, there are days when I am so tired I can barely stand. But I would not trade this life for anything. I would not trade you for anything. Do you understand?" "I understand," he said quietly, and she could see the relief in his eyes. "I just needed to hear you say it. I need to know that you are happy." "I am happy, so happy. Are you?" "Happier than I ever thought possible. You know that blizzard that almost killed you? I think it saved us both. It brought me the love of my life." She kissed him then, slow and deep, and they stayed on that porch long into the evening, holding each other and talking about their dreams for the future. More children, maybe. Expanding the house to give everyone more room. Teaching Thomas to read so he could help with the business side of things. Taking a trip to Denver someday, just the two of them, to have a proper honeymoon. The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and work and family. Thomas grew tall and capable, taking on more responsibilities around the ranch. The twins were inseparable, getting into mischief together and charming everyone they met. Olivia gave birth to 2 more children, another son named James in 1892 and a daughter named Sarah in 1894. The house that had once seemed so empty was now filled with laughter and chaos and love. Harrison proved to be every bit the father he had promised to be. He was patient and kind, but also firm when necessary, teaching his children the value of hard work and honest dealing. He taught Thomas to ride and rope, showed the twins how to care for baby animals, let James tag along everywhere despite his young age. And Sarah, the baby, had him completely wrapped around her little finger. Olivia flourished in motherhood, though she never gave up her work on the ranch. She had become an integral part of the operation, her opinions sought and valued by Harrison and the ranch hands alike. She had also become a pillar of the small community, organizing church socials and helping new settlers get established. The grief she had carried for so long over losing Thomas and Margaret had eased into a gentle sadness, a tender spot in her heart rather than an open wound. Walter retired in 1895, turning over the foreman duties to one of the younger ranch hands but staying on in a small cabin Harrison built for him. He spent his days making toys for the children and offering advice when asked, content in his old age. He told anyone who would listen about how he had known from the start that Harrison and Olivia were meant for each other, conveniently forgetting that he had been as surprised as anyone when they announced their engagement after only 2 weeks. In the spring of 1896, Harrison and Olivia took that long-delayed trip to Denver, leaving the children in Martha's capable care. It was strange at first being alone together after so many years of constant company, but they quickly rediscovered the pleasure of each other's undivided attention. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate at restaurants, went to the theater. Harrison bought Olivia an emerald necklace that matched her eyes, and she bought him a leather-bound journal for recording ranch notes. On their last night before heading home, they walked through the city streets hand in hand, looking at the electric lights that were becoming more common. "It is beautiful," Olivia said, "but I am ready to go home." "Me too," Harrison agreed. "As nice as this is, I miss the ranch. I miss the children. I miss our life. We have built something good, have we not? We have built something extraordinary." He pulled her close, right there on the street, not caring who saw. "I love you, Olivia Nash. More today than the day I married you, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." "I love you too," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in us when I could not. Thank you for finding me in that storm and giving me a reason to have faith again." They returned to the ranch to find everything running smoothly, and their children excited to show them everything that had happened while they were gone. Thomas, now 11, had helped repair a fence. The twins had learned a new song. James had lost a tooth. Sarah had taken her first steps. Life was full and chaotic and perfect. The turn of the century brought changes to Colorado. The mining boom was largely over, but ranching continued to be profitable for those who knew what they were doing. Breckenridge settled into being a quieter town, no longer the wild frontier outpost it had been when Olivia first arrived. There was talk of automobiles and telephones and other modern conveniences that seemed like something from a dream. But on the Nash Ranch, the rhythms of life continued much as they always had. There were animals to tend and fences to mend, crops to plant and harvest. There were children to raise and teach, a business to run, a marriage to nurture. Harrison and Olivia continued to work side by side, their partnership as strong as ever. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, but with his mother's quick intelligence. He took over more and more of the ranch operations, showing a natural talent for the work. The twins, now teenagers, were both interested in the horse breeding program and spent their free time in the stables. James showed signs of being the family scholar, always with his nose in a book when he could get away with it. And Sarah, still the baby at 6 years old, had declared she was going to be a veterinarian when she grew up, inspired by watching the town doctor treat their animals. In the summer of 1900, Walter passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. His death hit the family hard. He had been a constant presence in their lives, a wise counselor and beloved grandfather figure. They buried him in the small cemetery near the church, and Harrison made sure his headstone reflected the truth about who he had been. Walter Thompson, it read. Foreman, friend, family. That evening, Harrison and Olivia sat on their porch as they had so many times over the years. "He lived a good life," Harrison said quietly. "He was happy here." "He loved you like a son," Olivia replied. "And he loved this family. We were lucky to have him." "We were." Harrison was silent for a moment, then reached over and took her hand. "I have been thinking about mortality a lot today, about how none of us know how much time we have. And I realized I need to tell you something in case I have not said it clearly enough over the years. Harrison, you tell me you love me every single day. I know, but this is more than that. Olivia, you saved me. That day in the blizzard, yes, but also in all the days after. I was so closed off before I met you, so determined never to trust anyone again. And then there you were, brave and stubborn and beautiful, and you just walked right through all my defenses like they were not even there. You taught me that it was okay to hope again, to love again. You gave me this incredible life, these amazing children. Everything good in my world exists because you said yes to me." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face. "You saved me too. I was ready to give up that day in the storm. I had lost everyone I loved and I could not see a way forward. And then you appeared out of the snow like something from a dream and told me to believe in us. So I did. I took that leap of faith and it gave me everything. A home, a purpose, a love that has sustained me through everything life has thrown at us. I could not have survived without you." "Well, it is a good thing neither of us had to," Harrison said, pulling her into his arms. "We have survived together. We have built this beautiful life together, and we are going to keep building it for as long as we have." They held each other as the sun set and the stars came out, two people who had found each other in the midst of a storm and created something unshakable. The years continued to roll by, bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas married a local girl named Anna in 1903, and they built a house on the ranch property, carrying on the family business. Elizabeth and Emily both married as well, though they married brothers from a neighboring ranch and moved away, though not so far that they could not visit regularly. James went off to college in Denver, the first in the family to pursue higher education, though he promised he would come back to help the ranch in a business capacity. Sarah, true to her childhood declaration, apprenticed with the veterinarian in town and became invaluable to the ranching community. Harrison and Olivia became grandparents multiple times over, watching with joy as their children built families of their own. The ranch house they had shared for so many years became a gathering place for the extended family, filled with noise and laughter during holidays and birthdays. As they moved into their 50s, Harrison's hair turned silver and Olivia's showed threads of gray, but the love between them remained as strong as ever. They still worked the ranch together, though they had more help now and did not push themselves quite as hard. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still made love with passion and tenderness, still found reasons to laugh together every single day. On their 20th wedding anniversary in February of 1905, Harrison surprised Olivia with a trip back to the barn where he had first found her during the blizzard. It was a mild winter day, nothing like that terrible storm so long ago. They walked hand in hand to the spot where she had fallen, now just a small dip in the snow-covered ground. "I think about this place sometimes," Harrison said, "about how easily things could have gone differently if I had been checking a different section of the herd. If the snow had been just a little deeper, if I had missed seeing you fall. Our whole life together hinges on those few moments." "But it did not go differently," Olivia said firmly. "You did see me, you did save me, and we did build this life together. We cannot live in the world of what if. We can only be grateful for what is." "I am grateful," Harrison said. "So grateful that words fail me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Nash. These 20 years have been the happiest of my life." "Mine too," she agreed. "And we have so many more years ahead of us. So many more adventures to share." He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a ring, a simple gold band with a single small diamond. "I could not afford much when we got married," he explained. "Just the plain wedding band. But I have been saving for years to get you something better, something that reflects how precious you are to me. Harrison, you did not have to do this. I know. I wanted to." He took the ring and slipped it onto her finger next to her wedding band. 20 years of loving you, and forever more to go." She kissed him there in the snow, in the place where their story began, and felt the same flutter of hope and possibility she had felt all those years ago when he told her to believe in them. She had believed, and it had given her everything. They walked back to the ranch house slowly, in no hurry, enjoying the crisp winter air and each other's company. The smoke from the chimney promised warmth and comfort inside. Their children and grandchildren would be arriving soon for the anniversary celebration. Life was full and rich and good. As they climbed the porch steps, Olivia paused and looked back at the mountains rising in the distance, snow-capped and eternal. She thought about the frightened, grieving young woman who had stumbled through a blizzard all those years ago, certain she was going to die alone and forgotten. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what was waiting for her, that the storm would pass, that help was coming, that life held joy and love and purpose beyond anything she could imagine, but she could not go back, could only move forward. And forward was a pretty good direction when you were walking hand in hand with the person you loved most in the world. "Ready to go inside?" Harrison asked. "Always," Olivia replied, and together they walked through the door into the warmth of the home they had built together, ready to celebrate the past and embrace whatever the future held. The years marched on with steady, comforting rhythm. By 1910, the Nash Ranch was one of the most respected operations in all of Colorado. Harrison and Olivia, now in their late 40s and early 50s respectively, had stepped back from the daily operations somewhat, letting Thomas and his wife Anna take over more of the management. But they were still involved, still passionate about the work, still finding satisfaction in caring for the land and animals that had given them such a good life. Their children had all found their paths. Thomas and Anna had 4 children of their own now, and little Thomas Jr. was already showing signs of being a natural horseman at the age of 5. Elizabeth and Emily visited regularly with their families, bringing chaos and joy whenever they appeared. James had returned from Denver with a degree in business and a quiet, bookish wife named Helen, and was helping modernize the ranch's accounting and business practices. Sarah had opened her own veterinary practice in Breckenridge and was making a name for herself as one of the most skilled animal doctors in the region, though she still came out to the ranch several times a week to check on the stock. One evening in the early summer of 1910, with the mountains still snow-capped but the valleys green and lush, Harrison and Olivia took a rare evening just for themselves. They saddled up 2 horses and rode out to a high meadow they had always loved, where wildflowers carpeted the ground and you could see for miles in every direction. They spread out a blanket and shared the simple meal they had packed, watching the sun slowly sink toward the western peaks. "Do you remember the first time we came up here?" Olivia asked, leaning against Harrison's shoulder. "Of course. It was right after we got married. I wanted to show you the whole ranch, every corner of it, and when we got to this spot, you started crying." "Because it was so beautiful it hurt my heart," Olivia said. "I could not believe this was my life now, that I got to see this view whenever I wanted, that I was married to a man who would take time out of his busy day to show me beautiful things. I would do anything for you. I thought you knew that by now. I do know it, just like you know I would do anything for you." She turned to look at him, studying the face she knew better than her own. The silver in his hair and beard, the lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun, the weathered skin that spoke of a life lived outdoors. He was 51 years old now, and she thought he was more handsome than ever. "We have had a good life, have we not?" "The best life," Harrison agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not gone out that day, if you had not seen me fall in the storm, sometimes, and it terrifies me every time. To think how close I came to never meeting you, never having this life with you." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "But then I remind myself that it did not happen that way. The universe, fate, God, whatever you want to call it, brought us together. And I have been grateful every single day since." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. A hawk circled overhead, riding the evening thermals. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. The air smelled of grass and wildflowers and the clean scent of high altitude. This was home. This was everything. "I want you to know something," Olivia said suddenly. "If I could go back and change things, if I could prevent the blizzard or save Thomas and Margaret, I would in a heartbeat. The grief of losing them will always be with me. But I also know that their deaths led me to you, and I cannot regret that. Does that make me a terrible person? No, my love. It makes you human." Harrison kissed the top of her head. "I think about my former fiancée sometimes, the woman who betrayed me all those years ago. And I realize now that if she had not left me, I would have lived a very different life. Probably a fine life, a comfortable one, but I never would have come west, never would have built this ranch. Never would have been out checking on cattle during a blizzard on a day when a brave, stubborn woman needed rescuing. She hurt me terribly, but her betrayal led me to you. And I would go through that pain 1,000 times over to end up right here, right now with you." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks, but they were good tears, the kind that came from being understood completely. "I love you so much, Harrison Nash, more than I have words to express. I love you too, Olivia Nash, to the end of my days and beyond." They made love there in the meadow as the stars began to appear overhead, with a tenderness and passion that had not dimmed even after 25 years together. They knew each other's bodies as well as they knew the land they worked, every touch carrying decades of love and trust. Afterward, they lay wrapped in each other's arms in the blanket, watching the Milky Way stretch across the sky in a river of light. "You think the children suspect we still do this?" Olivia asked with a laugh. "God, I hope not. I would never hear the end of it from Thomas." "We are not that old," Olivia protested. "Plenty of people our age still have relations. True, but most of them have the good sense to do it in a bed, not in a meadow where anyone could ride by. Where is your sense of adventure, Cowboy?" He laughed and kissed her. "You have always brought out the adventurous side of me, among other things." They rode back to the ranch house under the stars, arriving to find the house dark and quiet. Their children had their own homes now, their own families to tuck into bed. Harrison and Olivia moved through their evening routine with the ease of long practice, banking the fire and checking the doors and preparing for bed. They lay down together in the big bed Harrison had built when they were first married, and fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, as they had done thousands of times before. The routine of their days continued with satisfying predictability. Up at dawn to help with the morning feeding and milking, breakfast with whatever family members were around, work through the middle of the day, dinner together in the evening, and quiet time on the porch before bed. It was not a glamorous life, but it was rich in the ways that mattered. In 1912, tragedy struck when a wildfire swept through the region during a dry summer. The Nash Ranch was spared the worst of it thanks to fire breaks Harrison had insisted on maintaining over the years, but several neighboring ranches lost buildings and stock. Harrison and Olivia immediately opened their home to displaced families and organized the community response to help everyone rebuild. It was exhausting work, but it also reminded them why they loved this place and these people. Everyone pulled together, neighbors helping neighbors, the community taking care of its own. One of the families that lost everything was a young couple with 3 small children. The husband, Michael, had been injured fighting the fire and could not work. Harrison gave him a job as a ranch hand with the understanding that he could take as much time as he needed to heal. Olivia helped the wife, Sophie, set up a small dressmaking business, lending her money to buy a sewing machine and fabric. Within a year, the family was back on their feet, and Michael had become one of Harrison's most trusted employees. "You did not have to do all that for us," Michael said one day as he and Harrison repaired a fence together. "Yes, I did," Harrison replied. "Someone helped me when I needed it most. I am just passing that forward. That is how communities survive out here. We take care of each other." By 1915, the ranch was thriving once again. The scars from the fire had healed, both literally and figuratively. Harrison was 56 now, starting to slow down just a bit, though he would never admit it. Olivia was 53, still beautiful in his eyes, though her hair was more silver than auburn now, and her hands showed the work of decades of hard physical labor. They had been married 30 years. 30 years of waking up together, working together, raising children together, building a life together. They knew each other so well that they often did not need words to communicate. A glance across a room could convey volumes. A touch could say everything that needed to be said. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a huge party. The barn was decorated with bunting and flowers, and tables were set up groaning with food. It seemed like everyone in Breckenridge and the surrounding ranches showed up to celebrate. There was music and dancing and toasts to the happy couple. Thomas stood up to make a speech, his voice carrying across the crowded barn. "I want to say something about my parents. I have watched them my whole life, and I have learned what it means to be a good husband, a good father, a good person. They have shown me that marriage is not just about romance, though heaven knows they still make eyes at each other like newlyweds." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "It is about partnership, about two people facing life together, supporting each other through good times and bad. About building something bigger than either of you could create alone. Dad, Mom, thank you for the example you have set. Thank you for the home you created for us. Thank you for showing us what love looks like." There was hardly a dry eye in the barn. Harrison and Olivia stood up together, hand in hand, and Harrison cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. Olivia and I are overwhelmed by your kindness. 30 years ago, I found this woman in the middle of a blizzard and convinced her to take a chance on me. Best decision I ever made. Olivia, my love, thank you for believing in us. Thank you for building this life with me. Here is to 30 more years." "Hear, hear," the crowd chorused, raising their glasses. The party went on late into the night with music and laughter and celebration. But eventually the guests filtered away and the family cleaned up and headed to their own homes, leaving Harrison and Olivia alone under the stars. They walked slowly back to the main house, tired but happy. "That was quite an evening," Olivia said. "It was perfect, just like you." "I am far from perfect, as you well know. You are perfect for me. That is what matters." He stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. 30 years, Olivia. 30 years of marriage, and I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. I did not think that was possible, but somehow you keep finding ways to make my heart grow bigger." "Right back at you, Cowboy," she said, smiling through tears. "You are still my hero. You will always be the man who saved me in every way a person can be saved." They kissed there in the moonlight, two people who had weathered storms both literal and figurative and come out stronger on the other side. Two people who had built a dynasty from nothing but hard work and love. Two people who proved that taking a leap of faith could lead to everything you ever dreamed of and more. The years rolled on. More grandchildren were born, then great-grandchildren. The ranch adapted to changing times, adding a telephone line and even a few trucks to supplement the horse-powered transportation. But the essential character of the place remained unchanged. It was still the Nash Ranch, still a place built on hard work and family values and respect for the land. Harrison and Olivia grew old together with grace and dignity. They slowed down, took more time to rest, let the younger generation handle more of the work. But they never stopped being partners, never stopped checking in with each other about decisions both large and small. They had built something together, and they would see it through together. In the spring of 1925, when Harrison was 66 and Olivia was 63, they took another trip to the meadow. It was harder to get up there now, their joints protesting the ride, but it was worth it to see the wildflowers in bloom one more time. They spread out their blanket and sat close together, looking out over the land they had worked for more than 40 years. "You have any regrets?" Harrison asked. It was a question that had been on his mind lately as he contemplated the back nine of his life. "No," Olivia said without hesitation. "Not a single one. This life has been everything I could have wanted and more. What about you? No regrets?" "Except maybe that I did not tell you I loved you often enough. You told me every single day, still not often enough. I should have said it every hour, every minute, because it is true every single moment." She took his weathered hand in hers, tracing the calluses and scars that told the story of a life well lived. "We did good, did we not? With this ranch, with our children, with our life together, we did better than good. We did extraordinary." They sat in peaceful silence, watching the clouds drift past the mountain peaks. A lifetime ago, Olivia had stumbled through a blizzard convinced her life was over, that there was nothing left worth believing in. And now here she sat, surrounded by beauty, with the love of her life beside her and a legacy that would extend for generations. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For finding me. For telling me to believe in us. For being exactly who you are." Harrison pulled her close and kissed her temple. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on a rough cowboy with a dream. Thank you for every single day we have had together." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold, they packed up their things and rode slowly back down to the ranch house. Their children and grandchildren were gathering for Sunday dinner, and the house would soon be filled with noise and laughter and life. It was exactly as it should be. Harrison and Olivia lived many more years, watching their family grow and their legacy expand. The ranch continued to prosper, passed down through the generations just as they had always planned. They celebrated 50 years of marriage, then 55, then 60. They became the patriarch and matriarch of a huge extended family, beloved and respected by all. And through it all, through the changing seasons and the passing years, they never forgot the blizzard that brought them together. The storm that could have killed Olivia, but instead became the beginning of the greatest love story either of them could have imagined. The moment when everything changed, when a cowboy appeared out of the snow and told a broken young woman to believe in them. She had believed. And it had given her everything. When Olivia finally passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 86 in 1948, surrounded by her family, Harrison held her hand and whispered one last time that he loved her. She squeezed his hand in return, and then she was gone, leaving behind a legacy of love and faith and family that would endure for generations to come. Harrison followed her less than a year later, his heart simply giving out in his sleep. They were buried side by side in the cemetery near the church in Breckenridge, their headstones reading simply, Harrison Nash, 1859–1949, loving husband and father. Olivia Winters Nash, 1862–1948, beloved wife and mother, together forever, but their true legacy was not in stone markers. It was in the thriving ranch that still bore the Nash name. It was in their 5 children, dozens of grandchildren, and countless great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, all of whom had been shaped by the example of their love and partnership. It was in the stories told and retold at family gatherings, about the blizzard that brought them together, about the leap of faith that started it all. Most of all, their legacy lived on in the lesson they taught by example. That love is worth believing in, even when it seems impossible. That taking a chance on another person can lead to the greatest rewards. That with faith, hard work, and partnership, you can build something beautiful that will last long after you are gone. The cowboy had found her in the storm and told her to believe in them. She had believed. And together, they had created a love story for the ages.